Well, here we are again. Now we're at number 4, where we're going to cover 3 chapters today of this little book called Becoming a Contagious Christian by Bill Hybels and Mark Middleburg, who were just pastors in Chicago and wrote a classic book. So we've been going through now. I hope you've watched the others. If not, go back and do them. So today, the attractiveness of authenticity. I grew up overseas, and back in the 60s, there was a book called The Ugly American. Very famous, seminal book that talked about in this Cold War battle between Americans and democracy and all of that against communism and the Iron Curtain countries. And sometimes we lost because Americans didn't represent the best of America. And they had chapter after chapter. We just needed to be better. And people would come to us if we were true to our best. Gandhi said that about Christians. He said, if Christians want me to convert to Christianity, they need to be more like Christ. He liked Christ. He would read the New Testament. And he said Christ was great. And he learned a lot of his nonviolent teachings from Christ. But when he found Christians who were not like Christ, it turned him away. And he kept to his Hindu beliefs until the end. And one person wrote, it says, you have to be the good news before you can share the good news. We need to live it and walk the talk. Anyway, so we just want to spend some time looking at this. In order to really be contagious Christians, we have to have an authentic identity. People can tell if they're just a project to us. We don't really care. We're just out to somehow we come out of our fortress and we put the bridge down and go over the moat and we go out and create a little trouble for Christ, someone said, try to win some converts and bring them back into our fortress, rather than truly being just genuine, authentic people who are living life. And because we live life a little better because Christ is in our life. And we're real, we're human, there's no mask, there's no cover-up. We're not afraid to admit that we have failures. We're not above people, talking down to them, we know better, lecturing people, always having the right answers. We're willing to ask questions. We're willing to learn and learn from other people. They have something to share with us, make our lives a little better. We are emotionally genuine. We're just in touch with the world, in touch with life. And there's no falseness in us. And it just draws people when they can tell Christians are just authentic. And they're real and they're good. There's reality television now. People get tired of watching shows that were not real. There were soap operas and dramas. And they were fun, entertaining, but not real. And people have learned to enjoy watching something that's real. That's really happening. And those are real people. People want real. Christ was real. God is real. Christians need to be real. Chapter number 5. The Pole of Compassion. We have IQ, intelligence quotient. I took a test the other day on EQ, emotional quotient. And now compassion. What is your compassion? How soft is your heart? Have you gotten hard? You watch a movie like Crash, and you check out your feelings about other people. Do you have us against them? Do you put people in categories and stereotypes? When you see someone in a wheelchair or someone who is hurting, you see the images in Haiti. Does it touch your heart? Is your heart soft to people? Do you have time for people? James 1:27, that true religion is not just sitting in church and the stained glass windows and singing hymns. True religion is caring for widows and for orphans and for poor and doing mission things and giving to others. Matthew 25 says you're doing it for Christ. There's a couple great stories told quickly. Rabbi's gift. There were these monks in a monastery that was getting old. All of them are in their 70s now. No one was coming. No new young priest. No one came to services. Weeds everywhere. One day, they knew the rabbi was in his little cabin out in the wood. They could see the light on, and they said to their head abbot, go to the rabbi. Maybe he has some counsel for us, how to bring life back into our monastery. And so the abbot went. And he talked to the rabbi, do you have any counsel for us? No, it's the same in the synagogue. No one cares about spirituality and coming to services. And the 2 old men cried together. Came time to go. He said, are you sure you have nothing for us? He said, well, maybe this. The Messiah is one of you. Didn't know what that meant. He came back to the old monks gathered around him and he said, what did he say? He said, the Messiah is one of you. One of us? Can't be us. Oh, no, could not. But the story goes, just on the chance that one of them might be the Messiah, they began to treat each other with extraordinary respect. And it changed the whole seminary, the monastery. People began to come. It began to have a life and a glow. And young men began to come and say, can I join? How do I become a priest? And they came for services and for picnics because of treating people as if they were the Messiah. As you have acts of compassion, treating people as if they were Christ. You do it for Christ. And those acts of compassion begin to create softness in people's heart for God. You give people a loaf of bread. You give them a ride. You care about your neighbor. You come over when they're moving and you help them move. And you do something for them. It creates a softness for God. And it tells them what God is like. Because we are the only way they can know about God is how we are, 1 John 4. And so we act acts of compassion. There's a wonderful story from the old legend about how the temple was built. I was in the Middle East a while ago and saw where the temple was. 2 brothers, one had 12 children and one had none. They built a mill, and every night they got their grain. They split it in 2. But the one who had no children said, it is not fair. You know, he has 12 to care for, but yet he makes me take half. And he, in the middle of the night, he would take half of his grain and put it over there. In the middle of the night, the other brother who had 12 sons, he said, it is not fair. I have many to care for me. My brother has nobody to care for him. I will take half. He would take half and put it in his brother's bin. One night, the 2 of them met in the middle of the ground, and they banged into each other and realized what was happening. And God in heaven said, that's where I will build my temple, when people have compassion for one another. And so that's what we need to do. To build God's temple, we need to have acts of compassion. What stops your compassion? Where you live, maybe, your home life, your work life is just sapping away your heart of compassion. Maybe how you're living time-wise, there's just no margin in your life. The Good Samaritan had margin in his life. He had time to stop for the man who had been robbed. He had some money to give to the innkeepers to take care of this one. He had a little margin. And so we have to have enough margin so we can be compassionate. And maybe how you live. Maybe you're just living too fast, too busy. And you're doing too much for God. And you have to say, okay, I will only do these things so I keep enough energy up to be able to have compassion. Be careful. Be careful. And then finally, chapter 6, the strength of sacrifice. Sacrifice moves people. They can tell when you're giving of yourself, sacrificing to make a difference for someone else. When I go overseas, they know, thank you for coming all the way over here. And so if you sacrifice time, you give of your time to just hang out with people, be with people, go out to dinner, have them over to your place. Money, it may cost you some money, and people know you gave. Yes, maybe God will replenish it. God has a wonderful resources to replenish what we give. But it just moves people when they know you have given of your heart and your soul and your money. And when you live a godly lifestyle, it's a sacrifice to not do some of those things in the world and say, I'm not going to do those things. I want to represent God, and I'm going to live a godly lifestyle. It's a sacrifice. But when you live a life like that, Christ, look at all the 2 billion Christians who have been moved to be Christians because of the sacrifice of Christ when he gave himself on a cross. So when we sacrifice, it touches people, it breaks their heart, and it creates a space for people to come to God. And so live a life of sacrifice and watch it open hearts for God.